It's dark. When you don't know where you are or how you came to be, even the simplest things can be supremely frightening. And so it was that when Walter awoke, his consciousness confused, hazy, the thing that he fixated on was darkness. A darkness so thick and oppressive it could have been a blanket. Perhaps it was, for all that disorientated boy knew. But a quick rustle around his immediate area made it clear that no, he wasn't bound or covered by anything particular. It was just dark. He'd been awake for a few minutes, and his eyes hadn't yet adjusted as they normally would. In the back of his mind, Walter rationalized that this must mean wherever he is had a true, complete absence of light. There was nothing for his eyes to adjust to, so waiting around in the hopes that he'd suddenly be able to see where he was, or where he was going, was a rather pointless endeavor. He rose to his feet unsteadily, and reached out to grasp at, what, a wall? Anything that might have been there to help him launch off the ground, and yet nothing met his fingers. And after an embarrassing moment of swaying, Walter tentatively took a few more steps forward. He didn't run anything, so he continued walking, slowly, and with one hand out to his front and one to his side, just in case. Hours passed as he walked, or at least he assumed that they did. Total darkness with no exposure to the grounding reference of sun and moon made it a bit difficult to figure out exactly how long he'd been in this place. But Walter knew, logically, if he only kept walking, he'd eventually end up somewhere. Even if it was a dead end, at least it would be reassuring to have found something concrete in this strange place. Eventually, he was tired. He must have been walking all day or night. Well, whichever. Either way, it's been a long time. He plops down to the ground, falling a bit too quickly, and yelps a bit at the impact. It's then he didn't realize that to try and call out or speak. Until now, this was the first noise he'd made. How silly of him. If there was anyone else around, someone else lost in this darkness, maybe they could help each other. Walter tests out his voice, calls out and asks, "Hello?" He is surprised at two things. First, that his voice was already so rusty and throaty from one day of solitude, and secondly, and more importantly, the sound of his voice does not carry at all. It's instantly swallowed up by the same damn darkness that's been surrounding him since he first woke. There's no echo, and this realization sends a chill down his spine, and he tries to distract himself by talking into an attempt at sleep. And after some hours spent laying there in the too quiet darkness, he finally succumbs to a deep, dreamless sleep. Waking up back into the blackness is just as disorientating as the first. And it's not all that stays the same on Walter's second day in the... well, wherever he is. He walks along just as he did the day before, only stopping when his body can finally go no further. He shouts a few times, but eventually gives up as his voice is almost instantly absorbed in the blackness and decides that his energy should be saved up for the journey, rather than needless yelling. And this goes on for a while. Days cycle into months, months into years, or so Walter thinks. He doesn't really know after all. In fact, he's made the decision to delude himself into believing that his perception of time is so messed up it's only been really a few days. He tells himself to quiet the sick feeling deep in his stomach that grows stronger with any step. Finally, he gives up. He stops walking and sits, and then collapses backwards onto the floor, staring up at what would be a sky or a ceiling, but it's just more darkness, and eventually his breathing stops, and in the quiet, dark world he found himself in, it is silent once more, without even the sound of Walter's heartbeat for the blackness to absorb.